From the Windy City to the Twin Cities, a Midwest whirlwind for the Giants. That's next on Curveballs and Changeups, a baseball podcast straight out of Sacramento. I'm Steve Harmon, and this is a podcast for Giants fans and baseball fans in general. I played the game, once hit a Grand Slam home run in an over 30 baseball league, and I covered the Hum Baby Giants as a sports writer in the 1980s and early 90s. I've been a baseball fan since 1967 when the kid down the block introduced me and my brothers to the Giants. A note, I'm hosting separate episodes now on the Giants and A's. You can find both on all platforms that host podcasts. Before I get into my take on the Giants, I do have another trivia question for you, and I'll give you the answer at the end of this podcast. So, we all remember the trade that sent Joe Nathan to the Minnesota Twins in a deal that brought A.J. Pierzynski and others to the Giants. One of the worst in Giants history, some fans believe. We also know that Lamont Wade came over from the Twins for a pitcher who never amounted to much, Sean Anderson. But who among you remember the Dan Gladden deal? That's my trivia question. Who did the Giants get in return for Gladden, an outfielder who became a core figure in the Twins World Series years of 1987 and 1991? I'll have the answer for you at the end of this episode. All right, the Giants are coming off a key series win over the Chicago Cubs on the road. Just another test the Giants have passed. They're now 24-14, tied with the San Diego Padres for second place, both one game behind the Dodgers. Wouldn't it be something if these three teams stayed in a dogfight for the whole season? And don't forget the Arizona Diamondbacks. Last week, I played a little extrapolation game on how the Giants may make it to the playoffs. Let's do it again. They're almost a quarter of the way in. At 38 games, with 124 games to play, let's throw out that 8-1 start and project how the Giants may do over the rest of the year based on their last 29 games when they've gone 16-13. That's 3 games over 500. I mean, not that great, right? That's a .552 winning percentage. It's doable, right? Within the abilities of this team. If they have 4 more of those 29-game stretches at 16-13, they would be at 88 wins and 66 losses with 8 games to go. And say they win 5 of those 8, that's 93 wins. That may be good enough to get in, at least as a wild card. With 3 wild cards, 2 of them could come out of the West, maybe 3. Right now, the Padres, Giants, and Phillies are the 3 wild card contenders. If the Giants play .552 ball the rest of the way and end up with 93 wins, Arizona would have to go 73-51 the rest of the way, which is a .596 winning percentage. And the Brewers would have to go 74-50. I know. It's too early to even worry about this stuff. Okay, a look back at this Cubs series. It was pretty big, some pivotal moments as this team winds its way through the schedule. It's a tough Cubs team. First place, top scoring team in the major leagues, is in their home park, but the Giants win 2 of 3. And they did it after dropping that first game in a truly ugly fashion, making 4 errors in a 9-2 loss on Monday. And then they were on the verge of a second straight loss on Tuesday. And this, I think, would have been even harder to stomach than even the Game 1 loss, especially how it unfolded with Ryan Walker blowing the save. If they lost Game 2, the pressure would have been sky high in Game 3. The possibility of a sweep was there. In that Tuesday night game, the Giants led 4-0, and then 5-2, and then 5-3 into the 9th. Let me just go through those late inning tests the Giants went through, just to remind you how close to a loss the Giants came on Saturday. On Tuesday. You know the game that they eventually won 14-5. In this case, the final score does not reflect how tense this game was. For a palate cleanser, Giants closer Ryan Walker walks. Maybe that's just not the right name to have. I'm just figuring this out. He walks 2 of the first 3 batters he faces. Then he gives up an RBI single to old Dodger Justin Turner, just like old times. More evidence that Walker was still fighting himself and not as reliable as we knew him to be last year. He did get a big strikeout with runners at first and third there, but Melvin came out to get him, to bring in lefty Eric Miller to face lefty slugger and star Kyle Tucker. Walker, as you saw if you're watching on TV, threw up his hands and barked at him as he saw Melvin coming out. I thought that was a little much for him. And, obviously he's a competitive person and he felt he could do the job. But, I mean, can you blame Melvin for making the move? It's a rare one to take out your closer, but it was out of necessity. Unfortunately, Eric Miller on the first pitch, a fastball down the middle, gives up the game-tying running RBI single to Kyle Tucker, and that blew yet another chance for Justin Verlander to win. He is now sitting at 0 on the year and still at 262 for his career. All right, now, though, Miller is facing the dangerous Keiya Suzuki, one of the top RBI guys in the National League with 31, with a winning run at second base. To lose this one, especially again with Verlander as the starter, could have been damaging to team morale for sure. But Miller gets out of that with a big strikeout. Got Suzuki with a 97 on the hands. Don't forget how large that was. But then Miller has to run tippy-toe over another tightrope in the bottom of the 10th inning after the Giants failed to score their ghost runner. He had runners at second and third with one out, and then he gets a big strikeout and then a stroke of luck when Matt Chapman was there to snag Dansby Swanson's line drive. And then, of course, the hitting eruption happens. 9 runs. I'll go over it really quickly. Koss is ghost runner. Ramos doubles a bullet to left field wall. Koss doesn't score because he is thinking that he might tag up on a sacrifice fly, but he totally misread that fly ball. It was over left fielder's head. Should have scored. Anyway, he was at third. Bailey then singles to center field for 1 run. Wisely then bunts. Ramos, who's on third base, scores ahead of the throw. That's 2 runs. Yastrzemski walks to load the bases. Adames is hit by pitch, barely, for another run. Jung-Hoo Lee singles to right field for 1 more run. Then Matt Chapman singles to left field for 2 runs, and Flores singles to left field for another run. Koss strikes out. Then Ramos doubles, another bullet to left field for another run. It was his second 4-hit game of his career for Ramos. And then Bailey drove in the last run with a sacrifice fly to center field. And there you go, 14-5. They were not going to blow this one. It was as if the Giants were rewarded by the baseball Olympians up in the sky for having gone through that gauntlet of the 9th and 10th innings. Word on Patrick Bailey. He had his best game by far this year in that 14-5 win over the Cubs. He went 2 for 4 with 3 ribbies, and each RBI came in separate at-bats. He's now close to getting off that interstate at 195. He's gone 6 for his last 14, raising his batting average 40 points. Even before his 11th inning RBI single to break the 5-5 tie, he was already having his best game of the year. He had a sacrifice fly to give the Giants a 2-0 lead, had a base hit as part of a 1-run rally that gave the Giants a 5-2 lead. He got a hold of one in the 6th, looked like he may have gotten it all, but it got tracked down near the wall in left center field. Maybe he's figuring it out. As I said in a previous episode, his value as a pitch framer is going down, so he's going to have to make some strides offensively, which includes cutting down on strikeouts. All right, Game 3 in Chicago had its own tensions. The Giants won 3-1, and that was because Robbie Ray was on it again. Turned in another dominating performance, limited the Cubs to 1 run on 3 hits in 6 innings, and that run was a fluke. Hard to blame Elliot Ramos, but there he was again. Remember Yankee Stadium in full panic, racing in vain from left field as Chicago's famous winds knocked it down for an RBI double. It's hard to coach wind-blown fly balls, but Ramos needs to figure it out. If you know the wind is blowing hard and in, your first step shouldn't be back, and your next step should not be hesitation. Oh, man, maybe he'll figure it out. One word about Melvin taking Ray out after 6 innings and 98 pitches. I think it's time he starts to stretch these guys out. If you're asking the bullpen to come in for 3 innings every day, you're asking for trouble. I get it if your guy is struggling to get through 5 or 6 on 95 pitches and just doesn't seem to have it. But if you're going strong like Robbie Ray was, why not ride that for an inning or 2 more and 20 to 25 more pitches? He's had a couple games now where Melvin could have gone more with Ray but didn't. If you push them now, especially as the weather warms up in the long run, your starting pitchers get conditioned to go long, mentally and physically, and you save a bullpen that is already taxed. So, Ray got that early support Wednesday, and it held, and he's now 5-0, one of 8 pitchers in the major leagues with 5 or 6 wins. Word on Wilmer Flores, who got the Giants on board in the first inning of that 3-1 win with a clutch 2-out RBI single. He now has 33 RBIs, 1 behind the major league lead Pete Alonso, Aaron Judge, and Teoscar Hernandez are all tied for first with 34. Don't tell me that RBIs don't matter. Don't tell me anybody can drive in runs, that it only depends on how good your teammates are to be in the position to drive them home, which one Saberhead told me this week. I blocked him on Facebook. There are some players who are built to drive in runs. Many aren't. And what I mean is that some players get mentally tougher in spots when a run is out there. Some players have a stronger mindset. They thrive on the pressure, find a way. Others don't. Flores is one of those guys who has always been clutch. Side note, in the half season I played in over 30 baseball, I thrived in situations with runners in scoring position, especially with the bases loaded. I had a grand slam home run. I had a 2-run double over the left fielder's head with the bases loaded. I had a bullet single up the middle for what should have been 2 runs, but the guy got thrown out at the plate. I also had a sacrifice fly to the wall in left field, just missing my second grand slam. I believe pitchers felt they needed to throw strikes to me. I was hitting 7th in the lineup, so they thought, just throw it down the middle. But then they had nowhere to put me, so I would be getting good pitches to hit. And I love the idea of driving in runs. It is definitely a thing. All right, enough about me. More signs that LaMonte Wade is returning to form. Still 1-0 the fourth inning of that Wednesday game. For a second straight day, Wade hits a bullet down the right field line for an RBI double for a 2-0 lead. Wade is creeping up toward the Mendoza line. Still a ways to go at 158, but he's hoping to put that interstate behind him. He's 8 for his last 28 with 3 doubles and 5 ribbies. That's a 286 batting average. Patience seems to be finally paying off, and now he's returning to Minneapolis to play his old team, so extra motivation for LaMonte. And a key hit by rookie infielder Christian Koss to give the Giants a 3-0 lead. Nice line drive single to center. Koss's bat is also warming up. He seems more and more comfortable out there. Remember what I said about starting Koss at shortstop against lefties, to give Willy Adames a break against lefties who he just can't hit. Just keep it in mind. Keep it in your back pocket. So on a windy day, 3 days was about as good as it was going to get for the Giants, and once Ray was out, it was up to the bullpen to hold. Melvin had already gone to Camilo Doval in the 7th and Tyler Rogers for the 8th, so it was Ryan Walker who came on, just a day after his 9th inning meltdown that blew Verlander's win. The first hitter reaches on an infield single. Here we go again with Walker, right? Admit it. You're thinking your darkest thoughts at this point, right? But almost out of nowhere, he gets a crisp double play ground ball and another ground ball to end it. So, Ryan Walker is back in our good graces, right? No worries. All back to not a problem. I think it'll take more than that, but Melvin is determined to get Walker back in a good frame, and there was a big sigh of relief with that win. Okay, so 2 out of 3 from the Cubs, 1 test completed, and another to come in Minneapolis. I've got a little scouting report on the Twins. First, the Twins are hot. They've won 5 in a row, sweeping the Orioles at home with a late rally to win Thursday. They've won 11 of their last 16 after starting the season at 7-15. It's a streaky team. They've had 5 losing streaks of 3 or more, and they've had 4-game winning streak and a separate 5-game winning streak. The Giants and Twins have very similar profiles. Both have been near the bottom of the barrel in team hitting. The Giants are 24th in the majors at 236. The Twins are 21st at 238. The Giants are 15th in slugging at 387. The Twins 21st at 374. They're both awful in on-base percentages. San Francisco is 16th at 314, and the Twins are 23rd at 307. Neither team runs much. They're 24th and 26th, respectively, in stolen base rates. The Giants do score more. They're 9th in the majors with 4.82 runs a game, and the Twins are 20th at 3.97 runs a game. So, I don't know, maybe we should expect just a bunch of low-scoring games, but once you start thinking that, you're probably going to get a bunch of barn burners out there. Byron Buxton is one of the very few high-profile hitters the Twins have. He's healthy, and he's showing it. He has 9 home runs and 25 ribbies, hitting .270. Ty France, their first baseman, leads all their regulars with a .277 batting average. Carlos Correa, Giants fans can be happy they didn't sign him. He continues to struggle at the plate, hitting .221 this year. Last year, he did hit .310, but that was in just half a season. The year before was more like it. He hit .230. One guy to watch for is Royce Lewis. He's just back from a hamstring injury that's kept him out all season. He's played just 2 games, no hits yet, but when he's healthy, he is an impact hitter. Pitching-wise, they're close. The Giants are 6th in the majors with a 3.24 ERA. The Twins are 8th at 3.48. The Giants give up the second fewest home runs in the majors, and the Twins give it up more. They're 13th best. The Twins have practiced what the Giants preached in spring training, no walks. Minnesota is second best in walks per 9 innings. Giants have not followed through on that mantra. They're 13th best. The Giants have had 15 quality starts in 38 games. That's a 39% rate, which is better than the Major League average of 34%. Remember, quality starts is the bare minimum, 6 innings, 3 earned runs or less. The Twins are below that average with 10 quality starts, so they've leaned heavily on their bullpen. All right, matchups. Game 1, Friday. It starts at 5:10 Pacific time. It's going to be on Apple TV. That's tonight. Jordan Hicks against Chris Paddack in a matchup of Texas natives. Chris Paddack, 29-year-old, 6'5" right-hander, veteran who started his career with the Padres. He's also another veteran of Tommy John surgery. Twice he's gone through it. He's pitched in only 148 innings in 3+ years he's been with the Twins. And this year he's 0-3 with a 5.57 ERA. He's given up 32 hits and 16 walks in 32 innings. But he's actually pitched in some bad luck, just like Jordan Hicks. Over his last 5 starts, he's given up only 8 earned runs in his last 25 innings. That's a 2.88 ERA, but lost twice and had 3 no decisions. 2 guys who have feasted on Paddack in the past from the Giants, Wilmer Flores with 2 homers and a double on 6 for 12 hitting, and Mike Yastrzemski with 2 homers and 3 doubles on 7 for 15 hitting. Hicks is again trying to gain a foothold on his season. He's had games where he had 1 bad inning but shown brilliance over 5 or 6 innings. The Giants have actually won his last 2 starts. He went 5 innings in both games, giving up 5 runs on 10 hits in those 10 innings, walking only 2 and striking out 10. I don't think the Giants are at the point of moving him out of the rotation as many fans want. If he can give them a solid 5 or 6, I think Melvin and company will be happy. I am going to say that I'm expecting better out of him in this one. I think he'll be fine. The conditions are finally nice and warm, unless it wears down on him, I think it'll be good for his presence on the mound. Hicks has really had no history with Twins hitters. Carlos Correa has only had 1 hit and 1 at bat against him. All right, Game 2 Saturday. It'll be at 4:15 Pacific Coast time. Start on Fox. And Joe Ryan will be going up against Logan Webb. Ryan is 2-2 with a 2.93 ERA. Ryan was born in San Francisco, raised in Marin County, and went to Cal State Stanislaus. He was a 39th round draft pick out of high school by the Giants, but waited around and wound up being a 7th round pick by the Tampa Bay Rays out of college. He's in his 5th year. His best year was 2022 when he won 13 games. He's only 7-7 in 23 starts last year. This year, he seems to have gotten off to a pretty good start. Over his last 5 starts, he's had 1 bad one against the Braves, but in the other 4, he's been pretty dominant, giving up just 2 earned runs in 25 innings. Only 13 hits in that time, 3 walks. He's had 47 strikeouts in 40 innings, always a strikeout guy, so he might be a tough one. Yastrzemski has a little history against Ryan. He's 3 for 7 with a couple doubles. Webb, of course, is pitching like the ace he is. He's 4-2 with a 2.67 ERA, coming off a nice rebound start, 6-hit ball over 7 innings in a win over the Rockies, after he got hit around a bit by the Padres in his previous start. Watch the matchup with Ty France. France has a home run off of Webb in 6 at-bats. And then Game 3 on Sunday, it'll be at 11:15 Pacific Coast time, and it'll be on NBC CS Bay Area. Pablo Lopez will go up against Landon Roop. Lopez is the Twins' ace. He's 3-2 with a 2.18. Last year, he was a 15-game winner, 198 strikeouts. The year before, he had 234 strikeouts, struck out 11 in 5 innings in a win over the Orioles just this week. But you can get him out of the game after 5 innings. And you get into their bullpen, you have a shot. Twins relievers are 6-11 with a 3.52 ERA. And that's not so bad. And their underlying numbers are pretty good. They have a 1.18 whip. Roop is still trying to find consistency. A little support in his last game, and he would have been in better shape. He hasn't quite recaptured what he had in mid-April against the Angels when he went 7 innings of 5-hit ball with 9 strikeouts. Not sure what the dynamic is in the manager's circle, but I would think that they're watching Roop closely for signs of improvement. If he falters badly, Roop could be the odd man out at some point. soon, especially with Hayden Birdsong and now Kyle Harrison waiting in the wings. Harrison showed that he had his big arm back in that first outing of the year Saturday. Sure, it was with that 9-run lead in the 11th, but the stuff was there, and his exhilarating promise was on display. All right, I've got a little Did You Know segment. Haven't done this in a while, but it's appropriate given the Giants' upcoming series in Minneapolis. Did you know, I mean, of course you don't, that I spent my sophomore year in high school in Minneapolis? My family arrived there in the summer of 1976, and we were there until the fall of 77. I was a big Twins fan those 2 seasons. Got to watch Rod Carew in his prime. I remember 1976, he was in a tight race for the batting title with George Brett. I listened to the game on the radio, WCCO, where his own teammate Steve Bride let a Brett fly ball fall in for the hit that gave him the edge in the batting title and led to charges of racial favoritism. I mean, that controversy lasted for years. And then 1977 was the year that Carew hit .388, putting up ridiculous numbers, 239 hits, 38 doubles, 16 triples to lead the league, 14 home runs out of the number 2 hole, and 100 RBIs. And that was the year where I got a bat and a ball in the same game. Let me just tell the story a little bit. It was, kids would go to the old stadium in Bloomington. It was called the Met. And it was open air, and it was really just open. You would get your bleacher tickets for $1 or $2, and then all the kids would migrate under the bleacher stands or the grandstands along the third base line, and then emerge back into the field level and the boxes where we went behind the first base area. And so we would be there before the game, screaming out to the players for the autographs and all, and watching batting practice. And suddenly, at one point, Steve Braun was hitting, the left-handed hitting outfielder, and he broke his bat. Now, he broke his bat in batting practice, which I never really quite thought about until now. How do you break your bat in batting practice? Get jammed by your batting practice pitcher? Anyway, so there was Mike Cubbage, the Twins' third baseman, carrying that bat back toward us, and of course all of us kids were yelling at him for the bat, but I was the only one who called him out by name. Hey, Mr. Cubbage, can I have the bat? And he threw it, and it landed short actually on the field, and my younger brother Daniel actually hopped out onto the field and grabbed the bat. But Cubbage, knowing that I was the guy he wanted to give it to, grabbed the bat out of my little brother's hands and gave it to me. I always felt bad about that. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if Daniel got the bat. But either way, I had a bat at the game. And, it turned out that we actually took seats in that box level behind first base. In those days, the ushers would tell you, you could sit there until the paying customers got there, and the paying customers didn't get there till much later. But in that time that we were in the box seats, Craig Cusick, the old catcher and designated hitter for the Twins, hit a foul ball back off the facing behind home plate, and there it was flying my way, and I caught it. I had a ball and a bat at the same game. By the way, the guy next to me had been asleep as the foul ball was hit, and when I caught it, he woke up and says, I would have had that if I was awake. And I thought to myself, well, you should have been paying attention. So that was a great moment. I came back home with a bat and a ball from the same game. Now, a PS to that story. 45 years later, I was in the press box in Sacramento covering a River Cats game. And, before games, scouts go there for their breakfasts or for the dinners if it's a night game, and hang around and tell old war stories. And I wound up taking a seat at a table with a handful of scouts, and I looked up and I saw a person I recognized. It was Mike Cubbage. So there he was, Mike Cubbage, telling stories with his old friends, and I perked up and I told him that my story about the bat that he had given to me, and he was very interested. Asked me about the bat, what it would look like. I told him it had that bicentennial stamp in the label area, the Hillrich Bradsby bat, and it all brought back great memories to him. And he had a little gleam in his eye, just a very wistful smile. Was happy to hear. He did ask if I still had the bat, and I had to tell him the sad story that no, it actually had gotten stolen when I brought it to a baseball game once. And but later I talked to another scout who told me that Cubbage was so appreciative of the story, actually had tears in his eyes, and it was just a great connection with a player who, not too many people would remember the name Mike Cubbage, so it was great for him to have that connection. And then another PS, I also made the varsity baseball team as a sophomore that year in Minneapolis, which was huge given that I'd been cut the year before from the freshman team in Berkeley. And that was at Marshall University High School in Minneapolis. I don't know if there are too many people in Minneapolis who would listen to the show and also who would even remember the high school. It was torn down many, many years ago. And that was in Dinkytown in Minneapolis, which is right next to the university. Great memories of Minneapolis. Okay, I promised you the answer to my trivia question at the end of this episode, and it is also associated with the Twins. The question was, who did the Giants get in return for Dan Gladden? An outfielder who became a core figure in the Twins' World Series championship years in the 1987 and 91 seasons. The answer, I had to look it up. Gladden was traded at the end of spring training heading into the 1987 season. He and someone named David Blakely went to Minnesota for players I never heard of and who never made it to the major leagues, Jose Dominguez, Ray Velasquez, and then a player to be named later. That player was Brian Hickerson, who turned out to be the only one who would stick in the major leagues. Not one of the better trades in Giants history. Hickerson would pitch for the Giants for 4 seasons from 91 to 94. He was what was called a swingman, pitching largely out of the bullpen but making occasional starts. He went a very unspectacular 18-18 with a 4.20 ERA in 356 innings with the Giants. And if you remember Dan Gladden, he was the heart and soul of whatever team he was on. He'd steal 30 bases a year, fire up his team with his brashness, and he'd come up with big hits all the time. Gladden was reaching his peak with the Giants when they traded him, and the Giants were heading into the Will Clark and Kevin Mitchell years. But the Giants also had Chili Davis in center field, Jeffrey Leonard in left field, and later Candy Maldonado in right field. It would have been a tight squeeze in that outfield. The Giants would go on to win the 1987 National League West with Bob Melvin as the backup catcher. And they went on to lose, though, in the playoffs to the St. Louis Cardinals, who would go on to lose in the World Series to Dan Gladden and the Twins. Gladden would kick things off with a grand slam home run in Game 1, the first time that had been done since 1970. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you for tuning in to Sacramento's Curveballs and Changeups with me, your host, Steve Harmon. You can find Sacramento's best baseball podcast on Apple Tunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you can listen to podcasts. Please hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when my next podcast is up. I'm also on Twitter, or what some call X, and Threads, and post my episodes there. If you see it there, please retweet or repost and tell your friends. Would be great to grow our baseball-loving community. Okay, until next time, lay off the slider, low and away.